First, let me say that I started the issue of this bill from the 8th Senate. And at that time, when I introduced the bill, it was really the first time I was working towards getting the bill to go for second reading. But incidentally, I assessed that the political atmosphere then was already becoming charged. And because of the sensitive nature of the subject matter, I felt it will not get a fair, conversation. And so I allowed it, and of course, it elapsed with the end of the term of the 8th Senate. And as God will have it that I'm back in the 9th Senate, believing that this is another opportunity for me, I decided to introduce the bill much earlier so that we can tackle this subject matter very expeditiously because of its importance. Now, hate speech as it is becoming increasingly a problem. Before, nobody was talking about hate speech. Nobody was talking about it because it wasn't even there. And of course, from what I studied, the word itself came on board in about 1989 by a scholar in the US who was looking at the lack of opportunity for victims of hate speech to seek legal redress, either civil or criminal. That was the major import of that study. In essence, people who are falling victims of hate speech are left like that, without any restitution, without any, what do they call it, compensation, without any, recourse to seeking justice for them. So, for me, reading from all the violence and all the crises, I came to understand fully well that most of the violence, if not all, that happened in this country were preceded by that hate speech. And clearly, it is showing that something is being said, uttered, spoken, written, in such a manner that it is so intense that it fits the definition of hatred. And so it's also able to spark in the victims or people who listen to such things the need to either inflict violence on people or to even go into rioting or fighting. So the end result is that those who come out to make these things or to say these bad words, these very extreme, words, they exploit two things or three things. In every society, there is a fault line. In essence, something that is a division between people. In Nigeria, you are either a Muslim or a Christian. And within the context of ethnicity, Nigeria has almost over 370 ethnic groups. And so, and every one of them is so proud of his culture, is so deeply rooted, believes so much in this culture, to the extent that when you speak ill of their culture or even trade that is associated with these tribes or culture, they feel is an attack on their existence. And they don't take it lightly. But is that how it should be? My answer is no. It's a blessing that we have diversity because everybody knows there is strength in diversity. And so we shouldn't allow people to exploit this diversity to create animosity and preach things that we know will result into hatred. At any rate, we all know the opposite of hatred is love. So this is where you can understand how these things have come about. And I have looked at studies conducted by civil society organizations, some NGOs, scholars, academics, and the subject matter is increasingly becoming a problem. In one by CITAD, that is where they said the two fault lines in Nigeria is either ethnicity or religion. And if you go back in time to check the history of violent clashes in Nigeria, you will see these are the two culprits.
Yes.
It's either a violent clash attributable to a religious misunderstanding or intolerance, or ethnic intolerance. So the question to ask is, if Nigeria must remain united and indivisible, are we going to allow that thing that can break this unity to fester? Hate speech is one of such very dangerous things. Now, the other aspect is this particular bill. It's sad that people just try to pin down the bill to the suggested punishment of death by hanging for those who are found guilty of hate speech that led to violence and loss of life of other citizens. Because it's not just that because you said some bad things that are termed hate speech, then you should go and be hanged. That is far from the truth. That's not what it is saying. In fact, there are statements you will make in the assessment of the independent commission that we're talking about that will only require inviting you and inviting the other parties so that they can broker peace and create understanding in a manner that going forward you will continue to relate with each other harmoniously, okay, with cohesion, rather than allow a little thing to fester. Because it's also been established in some countries, people inherit hate. There is hatred between his father and his, this person's grandfather and this person's grandfather. The father inherits it, and then he now passes it on to the children. It's serving nobody any good. So the point we are saying is that we've reached a stage in our country in which we must tarry a while and look at how beautiful God has blessed us with, okay, as a people, as a country, and to allow that beauty to be beneficial to all of us. And you can do this by having this independent commission that will help through the processes that have been provided in the bill to modulate and regulate how people interact without necessarily creating that very charged atmosphere using hate speech.